go ahead and call the meeting to order since it's 7 o'clock. Tom Regan's my name, and I serve on the Royal Oaks Environmental Advisory Board. And I just wanted to take a few seconds to talk about our origin story. We were kicking around the idea of a community garden on our Environmental Advisory Board for a couple of years. And one of the city staff person who works with the Environmental Advisory Board's the head of the Department of Public Service. And we got a new one this year, Aaron Filipski. And so we just asked him, what do you think about a community garden? He said, I think that's a great idea. We ought to do it. And if you've had any experience working with cities before, you know, if it's really, especially in cities like Royal Oak, where we have the weak mayor form of government, where the city manager runs everything. And if staff wants to do something, or if staff doesn't want to do something, they'll find a gazillion and one reasons why we can't do it, you know, and you never get past that. It's really hard. But when you got a staff person who wants to do something, they'll find reasons to do it. And that's what we got in Aaron Filipski. We've got the head of the Department of Public Service who likes the idea and wants to find reasons to do it. So we got really excited and said, let's go find out who else is interested. And so that's how we got this thing started. And so you're all the people we reached who said you were interested in getting a community garden going in Royal Oak. So that's what we're doing. We've had some good breaks. Treva Formby joined the group, and she's got a connection at General Motors, and they have battery pallets that make really good raised bed frames for gardens, and she found a way to get them donated. So once we get to that point, if we decide we want to use them, we'll have the opportunity with that. Eric Brown, the owner of Urbane Apartments, and he's a good guy. I've known him from some other stuff in town, but he offered to donate some land and donate some money. So we'll follow up with him on that, but that'll come in handy. And I just got contacted today by Nick Moritz. He runs a handyman service based in Royal Oak called Nick Handy, but he's interested in helping, said he could supply some free labor or, you know, whatever construction we have to do on the various sites, be it compost piles or raised beds or putting in solar power or, you know, watering or anything like that. So we might be able to take advantage of that going down the road. So that was good. Now, we had one brief meeting of our organizing committee before. We had a publicity committee get formed and a community plots committee get formed off of that. I asked the publicity committee first, who do we got from the publicity committee that's here that could give a report on what you guys did? And obviously on Zoom, we can't all speak at once. You know, you pretty much have to take turns on Zoom. So if you have something you want to say, hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen, click that reactions icon, and then inside there's an icon that says raise hand. So if at any point you have to, you feel like you need to contribute something, just click that raise hand icon so I know to call on you. And that way we're not, you know, talking over each other on Zoom. But anybody here from the publicity committee? I see Kathy Guest is here. Kathy, you want to talk about?
I can't get volume.
Can you put it in your speaker?
I can't, nothing goes in. These won't work.
We can hear you, Jane.
Really? Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't hear, I can't hear you. You're very deep.
Oh my.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not you, it's me. It's something with my system here. Sorry.
But Kathy Guest, why don't you go ahead and talk about what you people on the publicity committee have been up to?
Hi, everyone. So we have several people on our publicity committee, and Allison, I'm not sure if she is here, but she created the Facebook page, I believe. And we have a couple other gentlemen. One of them created a Twitter page. It's at Royal Oak COMUN1. So if you guys like Twitter or tweet, that's a place for you. I don't know how much we have up there. I don't have a big presence on Twitter, but I do love Facebook. We have 98 members. This time last week, we had like 3 members. So it's really grown. I like it. It does tend to work that way. One person spreads it around, it goes to another person, and it just happens organically. Our goal is just for now to generate interest and to have some interaction too. So we're going to start on that. I'm not sure we're going to call it either Tales from the Garden or Favorite Garden Stories, where people can post like their favorite garden story. I'm going to start it with my favorite garden story and then see if anybody bites on that. I have a call and an email into the Royal Oak Public Library. I want to get more information about their seed bank. I would like them to be aware of what we're doing and what there might be like an uptick in for the seed library, but looking at their Facebook page, I think things might be or their Instagram, I think might be under construction there right now. I don't know what's going on. I also want to post about places to donate. I know we talked about that at our organizing committee. Open Hands Pantry is a place. I had not heard of that before, so that's a good resource. At the Royal Oak Middle School Food Bank Garden, we used to donate to First United Methodist, and they, someone just mentioned that they were, you know, it must have been one of our people from the social media committee. He belongs there, and they do a daily lunch sack program for people in need and homeless people in the community. So that might be a resource too. So just right here in our own hometown, of course, there's Common Ground. They've got a great chef over there. She loves our fresh stuff. So that's the kind of content that we're looking at for right now. And just spread the word. The more the merrier, the more people we can spread this around to, the better. That's about it.
Thank you, Kathy Guest. And thanks we had on it was Allison Bone, Brian McLean, Joshua Wright, and then Kathy all helped on the publicity and getting this set up in Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. But thanks a lot, you guys, for doing that. Then we also had another subcommittee on community plots coming up with a plan to do community plots. Tammy Brainerd, could I call on you to give a quick report on what happened with that? You're muted, Tammy. You have to unmute yourself, Tammy.
Sorry about that, everyone. We did discuss charitable organizations as well that we could donate produce to. Open Hands was mentioned, Common Ground as well, and Lighthouse. The definition of community plots was viewed differently by some. Some thought if you worked the community plot, you were entitled to reap the benefits of the harvest. Some thought of the community plots as volunteers working the plot in order to have the produce to donate. So after that discussion, it was suggested that perhaps Royal Oak could have two types of plots in addition to the private plots. We could have communal plots, meaning that people that work those plots would reap the benefits of the harvest, and plots that are community benefit, meaning these plots would be taken care of by volunteers and the produce would be donated. And then we also discussed a little bit about what we would plant for the donated produce. And it was very agreeable to have a mix of perennials such as berries, asparagus, as well as annuals, perhaps even berry bushes or fruit trees and herbs in a small open garden, sort of like a little foraging area. We felt we have time to determine what to plant as we wanted to wait and hear from the two speakers tonight. And also find out how much land will be allotted to plots. Important to most was making the plots pesticide and chemical free. Anne has some great information that she sent to us via internet links. Also important was a compost pile or a compost area that hopefully could be used year round. So we also mentioned scouting. It's a little hard right now with the snow on the ground for some areas, but I think Red Run was mentioned since it's such a large area. But we'll be meeting again after tonight's meeting because we feel the speakers will be able to give us some good tools to help us lay the groundwork to move forward and manage these plots.
Thanks, Tammy.
Uh-huh.
When Tammy mentioned scouting, she wasn't talking about Boy Scouting or Girl Scouting. She was talking about scouting for locations. You know, everybody's scouting for locations. So if you have any ideas for locations for community gardens, because we'll probably wind up with multiple locations in Royal Oak, given there's no big plot of unused land anywhere. If you have any ideas for locations, we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting tonight, and of course in the future. But first, let's hear from our two guest speakers. First, we invited Amber Wagner from the Good Neighbors Community Garden in Ferndale to let us know what the Good Neighbors, how they're structured and the kind of stuff they do. But Amber Wagner, if you're ready, please go ahead.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. So I don't know if anybody of you know where our location is. We're over off of Hilton, Martin Road Park. We're across from the Detroit Curling Club, which is just, I guess it would be just north of 9 Mile. And we were given our land when our garden location was sold for a new housing development. So it was a strip of land that wasn't buildable, and they asked us, hey, what do you think? And we came together as a group and said this would be fantastic. There was no water. There was no, the area that we particularly got was a flooded area. We built it up. We built raised beds. I think we have over 30 to 40 raised beds. We have 10 community plots. We have a perennial garden. We tried fruit trees. Unfortunately, our fruit trees, they take a long time to mature. And due to, you know, we've got a water spigot that the city brought to us, but not having like sprinklers or a system to turn itself on, it's very hard to keep your fruit bearing trees to where they need to be in order to grow, to be successful. And I want to say, from what I gathered information wise, it was anywhere from 5 to 7 years before you're going to get like a good crop to come off of them. We tried full mature trees that we transplanted. We tried little tiny trees that were donated from the farmers market in Royal Oak, from other farmers up north. So we haven't been successful in that route. Berries, we've got a berry patch. Again, everything you know, it's the community effort that is hard for us right now, because it's kind of the henny penny scenario, you know, who will help me cultivate and who will help me do this. And then when it comes to baking the bread, everybody wants to come and have a piece of the pie. But that's one of the things that we're having a hard time with. We're going into our 5th growing season. Lots of benefits. I hear a lot of the things that you guys are talking about, and that is the community plots for donation. How many community plots do you have, and what is the definition of a community plot? The way we work ours is we have volunteers in the garden who do not want their own personal plot. They come, they are able to take from it. And then what we do as a whole garden is we put a produce box out this year. And as a whole garden, if you know that you've got 47,000 cherry tomatoes that you're not going to be able to get to, then it's up to you, private plot number 12 or 11 or 3 or whatever. You go through your own plot and you decide what you're going to put out in the community produce box for your neighbors to come and take at their convenience, versus you know, delivering it to organizations, which we did twice, but it definitely becomes tough because it wasn't on the regular, and you're not really giving them enough in order to, I mean, maybe a couple large salads, you know, a couple extra squashes. Even though you have 30 beds, you know, we don't have an operation per se. So we found that donating it to people who needed it versus families that needed it locally was kind of where our niche was, versus going to Lighthouse or the community house, or unless they were doing things on site. But our yield wasn't large enough to say, hey, we can supply you with a bounty, you know, as much as we are supplying with a bounty. It wasn't enough. It was more of a few families sitting down for dinner and having vegetables that are fresh and tomatoes that you can eat. And we also like the idea, and what we're adding into our garden this year is a raised bed. So that way elderly that cannot be on their knees, or you cannot bend for a long period of time, community members can come in and sit in a normal average sized chair and be able to still work in the garden. So we were calling them raised handicap beds. Not our garden per se coming in is, yes, smooth ground. So is it handicap friendly? I guess it's up to the person and how they get around, but that's what we were calling these new additions that we're adding. We also have in our beds, we have a children's plot. So we have 5 designated plots that I personally tend to with a group of local school children. My kids are of school child age to the point where they really don't want to help mom anymore. But we're going with the Kulik Center, which is our community center here in Ferndale. We're saying, hey, how can we bring a program in order to get the littles and maybe the littles' parents involved, where mom and kid could come, or grandma and grandchild could come and learn to grow something, or what kind of an activity could we do to get them interested in learning about that. So we were in the process of putting an education series together, and then bam, COVID kind of shut everything down. Before that, though, I had anywhere from 12 to 15 kids or families per se. And we did this year, the only thing I was able to do, because we could do it socially distance wise, was right over here by our city yard in Ferndale, we did a sunflower patch, and the benefits of planting and why we plant and what will we do with it and who will benefit from the sunflowers and how the sunflowers grow, so using that as a life cycle, the animals. But then it attracted, unbeknownst to us, local photographers that were specifically zoo photographers who came to our sunflower patch and documented and created this whole Facebook page and presentation that was done through the Ferndale Library. And it was just about the little insects that you wouldn't really think about, who live and thrive off of our plants, and the benefits of those pollinators and the life cycles. So that was the only thing that we were able to take out of our garden this year for the education portion of it, which wasn't even in our garden. You mentioned composting. Composting is definitely something that it's an education. If you do it and you do it right, you've got great compost. However, if you do it and you don't know what you're doing, you got a big smelly mess. So that's something that you really want to, we're really pushing for extra information on that in order to bring that component to our garden. Right now we do compost garden scraps. We get compost from the city itself. That's how we filled our raised beds. And taking the actual produce and composting it and breaking it down is something that we'd like to bring to the next level. We haven't gotten there yet. Irrigation is another issue. You want to make sure you have water on site, but then it becomes, do you do an irrigation system where everyone takes part in the irrigation system and everyone's plot just gets watered? Or is everyone responsible for doing garden chores, right? So you have volunteers, or if you have a plot or a bed, that everybody comes in and, hey, can everyone water this day, or who cuts the grass, or, so there's a lot of these other tasks that kind of are unsaid that are really important to make it function as a community group. So there's definitely growing pains that you 5 years later still experience. We were responsible for raising funds and putting a gate around, and you have to look at insurance and, what's your policy state, and who are they allowing in the garden, and how are you letting your community members know, because you could get stung by a bee and it's considered a risk. And, so you got to make sure you just put all of those factors out there. So it's kind of you come as you are, and it's how do they say in sales, you get an as is sale, like you're buying the house as is. So that's kind of the policy that we have as well. We have a little contract that we put together, and everyone just says, yes, I agree. And if I slip and fall because I misstepped in the garden, it's no one's fault. So is there anything specifically that someone wants to focus? I was just trying to kind of cover the balloon, if you will.
Yeah, if anybody
but I'm willing to answer any specific question if you have something specific.
If anybody has a question for Amber, if you could hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen and see that reactions icon and click that. And then above that, there's a raise hand icon, and then I'll see a raise hand next to your name and I'll know to call on you. Charlotte Massey, go ahead, please.
Hi. So how do you divvy up tasks in the garden? You know, you say you have community plots and various kinds. Like, do you have a roster where people sign up for you know, for various tasks, so many hours a week, that kind of thing? Or, you know, and also was wondering, like, how do it, you know, gardening is in the summer, a lot of people go on vacation. So do you share the work, you know, in the community plots when somebody's out of town? I just wondered how that worked.
Sure. So the community plots, so what we've done is we've taken, say we have 50 members in the garden. I'm not sure what our number is right now, but let's say you have 50 members for your garden. And let's say, like maybe Charlotte, you and I decide that we want to go in on a private plot together, right? So if I'm gone, maybe your neighbor or myself or whoever's helping you garden, maybe they would kindly take care of your plot. The community plots kind of work the same way at our garden. We've got a committee that's together who is, you know, I think there's 5 or 7 ladies that couldn't dedicate themselves due to health and whatever reasons full time. And then that committee is in charge of taking care of the community plots, be it weeding or planting or you know, hey, I took the squash out of plot number 3 or something along those lines. And it's really just communication. But yes, it breaks down to the you know, the groups or the plots, however you decided ultimately to set it out there. But it's definitely a group effort. And it's not terrible on the flip side that if, let's say you happen to be in the garden and you see that plot number 4 is terribly overgrown and nobody's tended to it, you know, we just kind of take it upon ourselves to weed plot number 4 or trim some of the basil or, you know, whatever needs to kind of happen. We just tend to stay out of each other's personal plots unless, for example, Tom was like, hey, Amber, I'm going to be gone from the 7th to the 21st. And if anything comes to growth, will you just, you know, take care of it or see if anybody wants it? Or that's kind of how we've been doing it. When it comes to yard tasks, cutting the grass or weed whipping or cleaning something up, or we kind of just created days of like, today is a community work day. And we looked at the growing season. If you say it's 4 months, like it's the 3rd Wednesday evening and the 4th Sunday of every month, like however you want to say it, you know. And then we also require a minimum of 10 hours per person who is affiliated with a garden. And you can come and do that on your leisure. You can volunteer. You can send an email and say, hey, you know, I weed whipped today and I was there for 3 hours. We're not really tracking like how many hours you're there, but every hour of help helps because what we did this year was we ended up hiring a lawn service because we have such a large space and our founding members, if you will, didn't want to like put wood chips and stuff down. So we've got a lot of grass, which I'm hoping we're rethinking that this year. But we hired a family who was hard on their luck and happened to be out there one day when we were there and asked if we had anything that we could give them. And I happened to be having a conversation with her as her kids were running around and learned that she had fallen on hard times. So I gave her a key to the shed and we pay her, agreed on a dollar amount, and she just text us once a month and say, hey, I came and cut this day. And you know, at a certain point in the summer, you're cutting every 2 weeks, and it really helped their family out. And that was another way that we gave back to the community.
Thanks, Amber. And Eileen Orlansky has a question. Eileen, go ahead, please.
I was wondering how large the plots were in the Ferndale, what is it called? Good Neighbors Garden. What is that?
I think it's you, Eileen. You might want to mute yourself again. But her question was, how large are the plots that you have down there in your garden?
Our plots, I believe, are, I think they're 3 by 6 foot. I'm not,
Galaxy S10e, could you mute yourself, please? Galaxy S10e, go ahead, I'm sorry.
yeah, I think the plots, the private plots, I want to say are 6 foot long. I want to say they're 2 or 3 foot wide. And then our community plots are 4 by 4. And then our 5 children's plots, gosh, they might be 5 by 5. And we've got 2, you're creating like a wheel in the center. So you have 2 plots that are kind of like odd size. We're considering adding a few mound plots this year, so they would not be a raised plot. They would just be a mound of dirt that you could kind of, maybe you guys have heard of hay bale gardening, where it's kind of like a mound and then you hay bale and you can, they use it for like smaller spaces or wet areas. We were kind of just interested in using some alternative ideas as well. So that I hope that answered a question.
Then Marilyn Rue had a question. Marilyn Rue, go ahead, and then we'll have Gary Lloyd.
Oh, okay, thanks. So I'm also at the Ferndale Community. And since I helped build the plots, I just want to mention that they're 80 square foot, which is like 4 feet by 20 feet.
Thank you, Marilyn.
Those are for the private plots. The community plots are maybe half that size, and they're varying sizes. But I want to mention that it's not enough. Everybody is saying, can I have a second plot? At the other location where we had our garden, it was 10 foot by 10 foot, which is 100 square feet. And it's pretty much the same, give or take a few square feet. But really, a lot of other gardens have more larger plots. In addition, I want to mention somebody asked about to share the community chores. We have a system called Google Groups. It's just a mass email system, and everybody is free to use it in our group. You can send mass emails and receive them. It's pretty automatic. So if somebody is going on vacation, they usually send out a mass email to everyone saying, hey guys, I'm going to be gone for such and such week. And they usually say something like, you know what, if anybody sees something they want to take and harvest from my plot, except for my prized tomatoes, go ahead and take it. And if anybody could, please water it. And then you get a lot of cooperation. And the same with any other thing. If you have a question like, hey, how about this? Hey guys, did you notice that that post got knocked down? There's just a lot of ways to communicate. So I just wanted to add those 2 items.
Thanks, Marilyn.
Thank you.
Then Gary Lloyd has a question. Gary, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I actually have 2 questions. The first one is, do you think the Ferndale Gardens would be open to doing some reciprocity help so that we could volunteer doing some just communal work there in exchange for some expertise from the Ferndale people to come help us get started, to make sure we're not doing it wrong and so forth like that. And the second part is, would the Ferndale Gardens you think be interested in outside help, like for me coming in and helping with vermiculture, composting, and that piece there?
Gary, you're hired. Yes. We've reached out, like, we're the Ferndale Community Garden, but we have members from Royal Oak that come over. I mean, we're a community no matter where you live. So we'd love you to come in, and we'd invite all of you if you have the time to drive over. Obviously, it's not going to be beautiful right now. You can see the space and it's very easy to get there. But we'd love for you to be part of it. There's a Facebook page. It's just the Good Neighbors Garden on Facebook. And if you request there, you can see things that we post. You can see pictures that I took and other members have taken as well. And we also try to put information there as well as in our Google group. But I think that bringing it back to the Ferndale members and saying, hey, they asked if we would like to be involved as well. I think that that would definitely be something that many of our members would be interested in doing.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Amber Wagner of the Ferndale Good Neighbors Garden. I'm sure we'll be talking with you more in the future.
Absolutely.
But thanks a lot. I appreciate you very much coming to our meeting and sharing your wisdom with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Now, we are also blessed with having a young woman who works for the city of Troy, who's one of her duties is supervising the Troy Community Garden. Her name's Nikki McEachern, and she, McEachern, oh, I pronounced it wrong. I'll let her pronounce it. So she lives here in Royal Oak, and she joined our little committee. So let's hear from Nikki.
Hey guys, Tom, can I share my screen?
Sure you can.
Okay.
Or actually, I should ask Amanda. Can Nikki share her screen?
Yeah, just give me 1 second.
Amanda's chair of the Environmental Advisory Board. She's actually hosting the meeting.
So I'm Nikki McEachern. Good try, Tom. I know it's a mouthful. I am a Royal Oak resident, big gardener myself, and I work for, can you guys see my screen?
You should be able to now. No?
No. Okay, hold on one more time. Try this. There
Yep.
we go now. Yep. Okay. So I work for the City of Troy Recreation Department, and one of my duties there is overseeing the community garden. And I want to say I'm going to share some of the challenges of this service. It's really a service that we're offering. We don't really, get a lot of revenue from this. So it is a service that we're offering the community when we run this program. And I'm going to tell you some of the woes about running this program, but this is such a noble cause. And I'm really glad to hear that Royal Oak is working on organizing it. And I'm so, so glad that you have the staff buy-in, because I think you really need that. And I'll talk about why. So our timeline for our garden program begins in March. We always have priority registration for our returning gardeners. We have vast majority of our gardeners come back every year because they love it so much. Some of them have been gardening there for like 10, 20 years. And then we open it up to new gardeners depending on how many spaces are left in April. In late April, we send out their map with what they got. Returning gardeners default to the same exact spot, and they really like that. They like to know that they're in the same soil that they are used to working. And then in early May, depending on the weather and how wet things are and when we can get in to till, we will open up the garden. We close it in mid-October and do final cleanup. So our spaces and fee structure, we have 96 ground plots. They are approximately 20 by 20 feet in ground. And I will say these are all private plots that people rent out individually. So, and then we have raised beds as well. There are 9 of them, and they are about 4 feet by 12 feet. We charge $85 for residents, $95 for non-residents, and we could charge a lot more. We fill up every year and have a wait list. This is our map, just a rough layout. We are in the northwest corner of Troy at the Troy Farm Park. And yeah, it's just a kind of a rough layout here. We do have a large fence. I'll talk more about that. This is a picture of our raised beds. These are in excellent shape because they're only 2 going on 3 years old. They were rebuilt in 2018. And they're really, really nice. I wish I had these in my backyard. And then you can see our newer shed. We have another shed as well. And you can see a picture of our fence. This is a picture of our ground plots and one of our gardeners working. So some of those resources that we use for this program, the biggest resource is staffing. So really big staff time in the early season when we're kind of getting going. And then again at the end in October. This includes my time to oversee everything, park staff, as well as the contractors like Amber was talking about mowers. We have a mowing contractor that comes in, and then clerical staff who processes registrations for us, answering phone calls. There's a lot of phone calls, lots of emails. And so that's probably my biggest recommendation, is having a go-to staff person that is really, you know, willing to take this on. And it sounds like you guys have that with DPW. All right, and then other resources, we also do use volunteers a lot for this program. And they do a variety of things, and a lot of it can't be measured because they are doing things that I don't know about, helping each other out. And many of them are master gardeners that know way more about gardening than I do. And so it's really awesome to be able to rely on them in different ways. But here are just a few things that they do. They help me measure out plots. They help me by being an extra set of eyes and ears. I do get out there at least once a week during the season, but they're there all the time tending to their plots. So they see things I don't always hear about. And then we do have a volunteer that does take a weekly donation of produce to St. Dominic Outreach Center. And we have been able to donate a lot. I tried to find the number of pounds, but I couldn't find it in my old files, but it's a lot. It's a lot. Other resources, we spend a lot on water, In 2019, we spent about $4,600 on water. Porta-John, about $700 on a Porta-John. There's no permanent restrooms at this park. Tools and compost. Compost is from Sakura. I never get a bill for that. So challenges, the community part. So I don't know where this is from, but I read it somewhere in the past, and you know, there's no drama like community garden drama. You would be surprised how dramatic things can get about community gardening. So just a little warning there. I highly, highly recommend some sort of policy agreement like Amber was talking about. I sent Tom a few examples last week, so he has those to look through, but definitely consider some kind of contract with your gardeners. Neglected plots. This is really sad. People spend a lot of money to rent these plots with us every year, and we always, always have people, for whatever reason, health issues, they get too busy, whatever, that neglect their plots. And it's just something that we deal with as, you know, as best we can. Water issues. So we have irrigation. We're lucky, fortunate to have irrigation at every plot. Our gardeners love this. Most of our gardeners are seniors, and so they love being able to have a spigot right at their plot. Many of them set up really fancy drip tape systems and things and timers and all that. But with that comes some potential for lots of problems. Watering when they don't need to water, that sort of thing. Leaks, maintenance issues, sometimes mowers run over the posts, you know, and we have all kinds of issues. So it's great that we have it at every plot. But it does have some problems there. And then another challenge is the gate. So we have a very tall fence that is excellent at keeping wildlife out, but we have over 100 gardeners that come in and out of that fence all the time. And try as we might, signs galore, lots of emails asking them to. There's always people that forget to close the gate behind them. And so wildlife get in? I've arrived to check on the garden sometimes and the gate is wide open. No one's even there in the parking lot. So it's just human error. That's all my slides. And just a little bit about the garden, but it's an excellent program. It's one of the main reasons I applied for this job, because I love to garden myself. So happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, if you have a question for her, hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen and click that reactions icon, and then click that raise hand icon, and then we'll call on you. Marilyn Rue, did you have a question? You're muted, Marilyn. There you go.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was curious about just how, like, what kind of staff pay is there? Like, the volunteers don't really do that much, and it sounds like the staff really do a lot. So are your staff actually paid?
Yes. Yes, like we're city employees.
So how many, like, work hours are involved for this?
You know, it's really hard to say exactly. I'm full-time, and I would say in April and May, I probably spend about 20% of my time each week on this program. And then throughout the season, it's probably an hour every week. And then probably another 20% at the very end. So it's significant because I'll have a lot of programs that I oversee. And then as far as other staff, you know, we have front desk staff that touch this program. We have accounting staff that deal with this program, marketing staff that do the flyers, the publicity, social media for this program, and they're all paid staff. So, you know, that's why I say that we don't really make money on this program. As a rule of thumb, we try to get 20% to cover our costs for what we charge programs, but it's so hard because it's, you know, it's like 5 minutes here, it's a 10-minute email here, you know.
All right. Gary Lloyd has a quick, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You pay approximately $4,500 in water, correct?
Yeah.
So do your member fees cover all of the costs, or is the city actually giving away money to do this, like sponsoring it?
Yeah, we're definitely sponsoring it. I mean, we try to cover most of our costs, but we don't cover all of our costs. I would say we probably recoup it. I would probably say we try to recoup at least 80% of our costs.
Okay, and then Gary Lloyd had a question. I'm sorry, Marilyn, I'm going to cut you off. If you have more questions, you can call her tomorrow, or yeah, we'd try to move it on. There's just other people in line. Gary Lloyd, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so since your water bill is so high, have you looked into doing a hand drill well, since this doesn't have to be potable water, that you could put in a hand crank?
No, we haven't looked into that.
I'm glad we got Gary thinking of stuff like that. Amber has a question. Amber, go ahead, please.
I was just going to go back to your water issue as well. As convenient as it is having a spigot at every spot, wouldn't it be, in your opinion, a little more economical if it was just a timed irrigation that maybe was on a timer and it went on at this time and this time for this amount of time that you could control? What would you think of that?
Yeah, we used to have, this is before I started here, we used to have spigots every 4 plots instead of every plot, and this was the city's response, was to give it to every plot so that the seniors would have better access to that water, just to reduce the amount of labor that they would have to put into this. But I agree. I think that there's a lot of water wasted this way, but it's, yeah.
Okay, and I just wanted to say, you talked about your intruder and posted the picture of the deers. I just wanted to let you guys know that we had a homeless gentleman that was taking up in our garden for a moment and was sleeping in between the beds and feasting on everyone's vegetables. So he was a very healthy homeless man.
All righty, and Joe Mosseri. Joe, go ahead, please.
Yeah, my question was going along with some of the questions that are popping up in the chat about rainwater collection. Has either Amber or Ms. McEachern Nikki thought about any kind of rainwater collection or like rain barrels or anything like that?
You know, yes, I've thought about a lot of things. Do I have the resources to implement these things and get it going? No.
Amber, any response to the rain barrel question?
So we've also talked about rain barrels, and I know that they had them at the other location. The problem is if it doesn't rain, you don't collect, and you still need the water. So yes, you could collect, and yes, you could use the water for other things. We have a water tank, a large water tank that we fill up, and then people just take from that. So our spigot is not running constantly. And then we've also reached out to the city, and the city will come, and the fire department will actually come and fill our big, huge retention canister for us. They've done that a couple times, which is water saving, you know. And then, but the thought of the rain barrels, it's again, it's a system that you need in order to collect, and which is one of the reasons why we keep going towards the timed irrigation. Like, you know, if it's hung from above and then everyone's plot gets watered at the same time and it's on a timed water schedule, we thought that that might be a great way to collect and save on the expense of water if we timed it and then it had like a drip fall of some sort. That was something that we were reaching out for. So.
And then Woody Gantina had a question. Woody, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Nikki, thank you for the information. That was very, very helpful. I had a quick question going back to some of the costs. Do you have a specific line item budget for your activities related to some of the staff requirements, or is it sort of encompassed within, I guess, the department that you fall under as part of their budget?
It's just within my recreation program budget. Yeah, it's wrapped up with everything from yoga classes to no. And it's different from year to year because of things like water and what happens with water. And yeah.
And Gary Lloyd, did you have another question?
No, did my hand stay up for some reason?
Yeah.
Because I had to like switch this over to the keyboard. Is it good? Did it go
Oh,
away?
there you go. Now it's down. I thought you had another question. Okay. Then Kathy Guest.
I had to turn on and use the Alt-Y because I don't have a thing under reactions to raise a hand.
Oh, okay. Then did anybody else have a question that I missed? I don't see any raise hand icons. Now, Kathy, go ahead, please.
Thanks. Thank you, Nikki. This is so valuable to have this kind of perspective, so such a streamlined operation. When we did gardening at the schools, we had just a spigot and a hex key. And so it was kind of like we could either fill a container and walk it over or squirt it or maybe run a sprinkler. I'm wondering how we would accomplish, like at a small plot, just somewhere that where we wouldn't have access to water. We're kind of wondering how that would work. I don't know. You guys are very fortunate to have like everything you need right there, and like kind of the luxury of even having it at every bed. That's really nice.
It's really nice. It's really, really nice. You know, other community gardens get away with like big
rain barrels.
Not like I've seen they're like big tanks, and sometimes cities will come and fill those up for those community gardens. Like I used to live in Bloomington, Indiana, and one of their community gardens had something like that.
I think that's what Amber was talking about. She has something like that in Ferndale.
Yeah,
it would be helpful. Maybe you could drive around once a every couple of days, or people could bring in water. I don't know. Something to think about.
And then Amber, did you have one last statement to make? I saw your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to comment on, you know, if you don't have access to the water, before our giant container came, that's what we were doing. Like the city put at one end of the garden, put a spigot, and we would go and you'd fill up your buckets, and as heavy as you could, you just lumped it across the unlevel ground and prayed to God it didn't all fall out before you got there. So, I mean, but that's why the children came in handy, because if you had friends in the garden, then guess what? Everyone grab a bucket, and this is what we have to do to start out. And that's kind of what I did with my children in our learning groups, was bring a pail and bring a shovel and bring your little gardening gloves. And that's where we started, was at the one end of the garden with little kids, 2-year-olds, in their little teeny tiny beach pails carrying water. It was just an added element. It was quite humorous, and at least they got water to where they needed to do in order to learn what they had to do. So you got to go the old way sometimes.
And then you don't have any city staff helping you on that garden, do you, Amber?
So we have nobody on staff technically. However, I live right next to the city yard. So the gentlemen that work in the yard, hi, can you come and help us, you know, and lure them to the garden with baked goods and treats from time to time. So we phone a friend and get the compost redropped, or we worked it so that way, even when the Detroit Curling Club is not operational, we still have compost and the garbage collection, and they'll come, we'll put our garbage cans out. So no staff per se, but I've called quite a few times, like when we did the sunflowers, and I was like, can you guys till for us? Can you help us out? Can the city do stuff for us? Which they came back and said, listen, if we have other vacant properties, would you be willing to possibly do something with those? And you guys had mentioned previously, and I wanted to just touch base, and then I'll give it back to you, was you talked about maybe different gardens in different areas versus in one particular area. When we thought about doing this, so let's say between, you know, on one of your streets, you have like an empty lot, but it's not really buildable. It's just, you know, a passage or whatever. Doing something specific like on 4th Street is the tomato garden, and you just have different varieties of tomatoes come, and you let your community members know that there's tomatoes growing here, or at this park we've got, you know, lettuces or whatever, you know, and you kind of put those in, and that would be something working with your city people who are involved that are interested to say, hey, where could we grab a corner plot or something like that? And then you just make cute signage that says, you know, this is for every, feel like a tomato, have a tomato, you know, like, you know, we've got basil, thyme, and lemon balm growing here with a quick, you know, description of why or who or what it's for, and welcoming your community to use it that way in smaller beds versus everyone wanting a plot like Marilyn was talking about and wanting a bigger, better place to grow, you know. So that's a nice way to get the community outside of the garden into it and grow your program as well.
Okay, Amber Wagner and Nikki McEachern, thank you very much. Good information. Good hearing from two really different perspectives. And yeah, I thought both of you information you gave us was very valuable. So everybody give them a nice wave of a thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Amber. Thank you, Nikki. And then the final item I had on my agenda, and we talked about this at our last organizing committee meeting, is does anybody have any ideas they wanted to share for our locations? And of course, I hasten to add, we're going to have to clear any locations with the city and or the school district. And even if it's private land, we'll probably need some kind of cooperation from the city on it. So we won't be able to decide, you know, we're going to put it here, you know, but given all those caveats, does anybody have any ideas for locations they'd like to share? And if you do, click that raise hand icon at the bottom of the screen, and then I'll call on you. But I did see Carolyn Ludwig hand go up first. So Carolyn Ludwig, what ideas did you have?
Well, I've got several ideas. suggest a plot at the school that is near me, that is Keller School. It's behind Keller School, and there's a park behind there. And there's room for a community garden. But the things I think would be needed would be a fence, because it would make it so everybody couldn't get in there. And I suggest a fence that is like the one by the Manager Community Center, where they have that wooded area where people can get in and out, but you can't really bring anything much with you, except you could bring a shovel and buckets and things. The well idea is probably good. I definitely think you need water. You have to have this city bring in water. And I belonged to a community garden in Detroit at one time, and it was run by Wayne University. And they had water there with a hose coming from one spot, and people just shared the hose to water their part of the garden. And they had a fence around it, and then they had a gate that would automatically shut when you went in and out. It didn't have to be shut. It just shut. And people had a code to be able to get into that gate. So that was my suggestion, that area by Keller School.
Thanks, Carolyn. Kathy Guest, go ahead, please.
Hi, I'm just going to read from Allison on our social media committee, posted something that Josh on our committee wrote. He couldn't be here tonight, but he suggested Lloyd Park in the Northwood neighborhood. He says a tiny triangle of city land created by intersection of Lloyd, Northwood, and Maplewood. Yeah, I know where that is. Plus is underutilized, city-owned in neighborhood. Minus is trees, lack of water, possible cranky neighbor. The other one is the, now this one sounds viable to me. Royal Oak First United Methodist Lawn, corner of 7th and Washington. Plus a sunny location, downtown. Church serves daily meals for the needy, that lunch sack program. Big pool of volunteers. That's an understatement. I'm a member and friends with pastor, most of church leadership. Minus is privately owned, might be pushback from some members who are big on lawns. But that might be a really nice collaboration too.
You said that was Josh Wright?
Josh Wright.
Then David with the lowercase d, go ahead, please. Yeah, go ahead, David. We can't hear you, David, if you're talking. Okay, let's go on to Mary. Mary was next. Mary, with your hand up, you're muted if you're talking. Okay, now Charlotte Massey, go ahead, please. Charlotte Massey.
Hi, I live near Keller too. I checked out that area. It does have a lot of playground, and I believe it's a playing field, but there is an area that used to be a water garden that is now, I think, part of the parkland. So that was one suggestion. I also thought near the Churchill Community Center, which is also where the school administration offices are, on the part of the land that's owned by the school, there's like in front of, on the sort of south of the community center, there's kind of a sheltered area between two buildings, kind of L-shaped, that is quite large. I don't know if that might be a possibility. Right next to that is Red Run Park, which is owned by the city. And that is also got an area that you might be able to fence some of that off. That's a very large area. I think it might be the biggest park in Royal Oak. So.
Andrew Bleisniuk, go ahead, please, Andrew.
It's actually Larissa. Sorry, I didn't change my, sorry, I didn't change it.
Okay.
No, it's no problem, Tom. So a couple thoughts. You know, I do know that at Churchill that gets really wet over there. That's something just, I guess it's probably good for us to continue looking as the thaw happens to see where the water collects. I'm sure we're probably talking to the city for their suggestions. One thought that I had is that actually, if we think about the elementaries, if they're not using their property for soccer fields and there's room, that might be really good to just do at all the schools, think about some level of collaboration with them. That would really distribute the gardens in a really kind of good way geographically, give a lot of folks opportunity. That's an option. I was thinking the other option is really, and I don't know what the ownership is off of Crooks, behind the new development by the high school. I know high school's mentioned in the chat, but it seems like either where the old tennis courts are, there's that big plot of land that they never use for anything other than maybe running around, maybe some training, but they have a lot of space in other areas. So I think that along Crooks and right behind the development where the new Mario's Pizza is are the two places I was thinking that has a lot of kind of contiguous land. So those are the thoughts.
And I think that was the, last, did anybody else have anything they wanted to say on locations? We can talk about where we go next.
Hey, Tom, this is Woody. My raise hand isn't working.
Oh, I'm sorry, Woody, go ahead.
No problem. I'm not sure if it's privately owned or not, but it is, it's on Crooks Road and it's bounded by Beechwood and Walnut. It's a triangular plot at the end of a residential neighborhood. It may be privately owned, but it's across the street, kind of kitty corner to Northwood Elementary School. In looking at it in totality, it's probably the size of a single family lot, but because of its irregular triangular shape, I think you'd be hard pressed to actually develop it as a single family lot ever. So that strikes me as a good one. Good location in terms of access right off of Crooks, and also good location in terms of exposure to be able to advertise that it is a community garden. But it is currently just an open plot, no fencing, there's a few trees. I doubt there's water or anything there, but I drive by it regularly and often wonder if we could be doing something better with that than having it just sit there.
Tom? Go ahead.
Tom?
Go ahead, Chris.
Okay. I guess my little hand icon doesn't work either because I've been pressing it. So sorry to just bust in, but I still think we should consider the community centers. I think the west side of Salter, the Salter Center, is a sunny spot. I'm not aware that anything's going on that side of the building. The Mahaney Meininger Center might be more limited in size because the Arboretum is there and the Royal Oak Nature Society is doing a lot of work there, but they do have water access there. But I do want to just mention to people that as much as I understand people wanting to start to do something with the schools, with the elementary schools, COVID has had a huge impact on the school district and teachers are going to be concentrating on catching kids up. And I don't think this is a good time to start a collaboration with any of the schools if we're talking about collaborating with students. Maybe in the future, but I really don't think they need anything else on their plates right now. So I would discourage that as one of our first ventures and maybe put that on the burner for in the future.
Yeah, it wasn't really collaborating in that regard. It was more like we're kind of on complementary seasons is what the thought was. So, but yeah, I appreciate that. The one thing I wanted to respond to Woody real quick, Tom, is that the challenge with those small plots, we here on Northwood Boulevard, the parks took down, someone planted sunflowers on one of the medians and they took them down because it blocked traffic and views of turns. So if we look at those little triangles that are bounded by roads or streets, we won't be able to plant high and that will cause an issue.
Good point. Thank you.
Alrighty. Well, as far as next, I was thinking two things. First, we probably, I know this is jumping the gun, but we probably need to move on several fronts simultaneously. And one of them would be getting some kind of committee together who'd like to look at some of these sites, especially after the snow melts, and, you know, come up with some concrete ideas on where we could actually put one of these things. So I'd ask if anybody's interested in serving on like a site committee, if you could just put your name in the chat, just say, I would like to serve on the site committee. And then at the end of the meeting, we can save that as a text document and I could look in there and say, so just if you're interested in serving on a site selection committee, just put your name in that chat right now. And then we'll collect all those names. Then the second notion was that there are some other community gardens locally, which I think it'd be good to hear from. One right there in Pleasant Ridge, they've got a very successful one. And does anybody have any suggestions for any other community gardens that maybe we'd benefit from hearing from as a group before we get down to making any concrete plans? I know there's a whole bunch of them in Detroit, but Nikki McEachern mentioned West Bloomfield. Anybody have any? And if you do, just unmute yourself and go ahead, Charlotte.
Yeah, there's, I was looking at doing a bit of research. Besides, there are two consortiums of community gardens. The one in Detroit is like, it's the urban agriculture, Keep Growing Detroit, and it's like a whole group of urban farms, and they have a website with resources. And then Ann Arbor has one called Project Grow, which has a mixture, like kind of like what we're looking at doing, like a whole bunch of different plots. Around the city, they have like standards for organic gardening and so on. So they both have websites. I can put them in the chat if you like, but they might be worth contacting. Both, like they're kind of like, you know, like, yeah, kind of networks of gardens in those two communities, Detroit and Ann Arbor.
And does anybody else have any ideas on community gardens that maybe we'd all like to hear from? I think I'll invite Pleasant Ridge unless anybody objects or feels wrong about that.
Pleasant Ridge, Tom, if I can just throw, I spoke to them, and they're very similar to what Nikki was talking about in Troy. It is on a smaller scale. They're in a landlocked location, which is something that I would suggest talking with your city. If there's any landlocked locations that the city owns, that's a great spot in order to create your garden spot. It can't be grown, nothing else can be built there. And, you know, like that's kind of how Pleasant Ridge got their location right along the expressway, which is crazy because you can garden on one side of the wall. And if you're tall enough, you can see down 696. And their beds are amazing. It's tiny and it's adjacent to their dog park, which is a gorgeous area that they should take over and garden in. But you can go and walk the area. It's a great walking trail and it's a great little corner location as well. They kind of started it nonchalantly, kind of how you and I and, you know, every community garden starts, but they're using a really incredible technique for their raised beds. You know, those, they're like large silver water troughs, if you will. They use those in some of their raised beds. They're using those. So they have nothing that's built out of wood except for what you put into your bed.
Okay.
Thanks, Amber.
Yeah, there's also one other location off of 13 Mile. If you head west on 13 Mile, there's a church high school.
You do yours.
And there's a church garden right there.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amber. I guess we're ready to adjourn then. I think, again, if you are interested in serving on a site selection committee, dump your name in the chat. And we'll schedule another meeting. I'll invite the Pleasant Ridge Community Garden and at least one other, some other people dump some suggestions in the chat. So we'll look at that. Does anybody have any points they want to bring up before we adjourn? Just go ahead and unmute yourself and make your point if you have one.
Yeah, Tom, I had
I'm going to check. I'm going to have to
go ahead, Katie.
Yeah, I was wondering if there was a directory. I know that you've started a listserv. I'm wondering if we could set up a directory of who wants to do what or what skills they have, what they'd like to contribute, just so that we have an idea of what everyone would like to get out of the project or why they're here, and then see what resources we all have.
That's a good idea.
I'd love
You're on the email list. Can you reply back to that last email, and then let's set up a time to talk about that. That's a good idea. Yeah.
I'm happy to help with that.
Yeah, let's definitely do that. That's a good idea. Yeah, email me and we'll set up a time to talk.
For sure.
Does anybody else have anything they want to mention?
This is David Baldwin. Can you guys hear me?
Oh, go ahead, David. Sure. David Baldwin used to run the Royal Oak Community Farm right here in Royal Oak for years. And yeah, we're really happy to have you here, David. I'm sorry I didn't even notice you on the call. But yeah, please go ahead, David.
Yeah, well, yeah, thanks for letting me know about this, Tom. But also, basically, I just wanted to open it up for anyone who had questions from me on how it worked. The farm worked with the city. It was not what I consider a typical community garden type setup. So if anyone's curious, please, let me know if you have any questions.
Well, David, if you don't mind, why don't we have you as our guest speaker along with the Pleasant Ridge Farm at our next meeting? Would you be willing to do that?
Yeah. When is the next meeting?
We haven't scheduled it yet.
Okay.
You're on our email list, I think.
Yeah, I'd definitely be willing to do that. It's just I will be unavailable for the next several weeks. That's why I wanted to, open up for questions if anyone had any today. But absolutely, I'd love to help out if I can.
Okay, yeah, we'll have you sooner or later. Yeah, well, I'll email you. We can set up a time. Does anybody else have any points they want to make before we adjourn? Alrighty, well, thank you, everybody. We'll get a meeting of the site selection committee together. We'll schedule our next meeting, and then we'll just communicate by email and through our Facebook group. On the Facebook page, there is a link. If you'd like to add your name to our email list, you can do it, and you can we'll reach you then. But thank you, everybody. Good evening. We'll adjourn now, and see you next time.